Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to another How We're the podcast, as you find us talking non-stop about the lads to try and help everyone cope with the nonsense of a second international break with just 7 games gone. And there is a reason why they're thinking of scrapping one of them, to be fair, because let's face it, international football outside of the tournament is just a bit dull. So we're here with daily content to talk all about Sunderland, and I have a couple of people with me to talk about how we stand. And first up, I have the soothing, optimistic voice of Gavin Henderson. Hello, Gav.
Oh, you're being nice to me today. The roles have reversed, mate.
See, I told you it was weird, didn't I? You wouldn't believe it.
Yeah. No, I like it, mate. Keep it coming. Just keep the compliments flowing. Quite happy with that. Yeah. Yes, glad to be here, mate. And I think after a few days of stewing on Man United, I think we're looking firmly forward at the more optimistic side of the season, I think.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed the Q&A the other day. We had some good ones sent in, didn't we?
We did, and again, thank you everybody who sent them in. I think we managed to get through about 20 questions, so God knows how we did it. But if people want to get involved on next week's Q&A, they can email rotoreport@yahoo.co.uk or contact us on whatever social media platform you choose to use, and we'll certainly get you included next week, because I can't imagine a great deal will change between now and then. So a lot of the things that are on your mind right now will probably still be on your mind in a week's time.
Yeah. And the peek behind the curtain, it's always the same when Gav says, do you fancy doing a quick half hour for a Q&A? It's never half an hour, and we'll rattle through 20 questions. But yeah. Well, next up, we have someone who we haven't heard from on How We're the podcast since before a ball was kicked in early August. He's the sports reporter covering the big 3 in the Northeast for the Northern Echo, and you may have seen him on the We Are Sunderland YouTube channel. We are very pleased to welcome Dom Shaw. Hello, Dom.
Hello, how are you doing? Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, I'm not bad, thanks. How's things?
All right. Yeah, all right. It's what a start the season, really. I know we'll get into it, but Gav, we were talking, weren't we, about how last time we spoke, the excitement had ramped up from May, and yet really it feels like, I know we're on the back of a defeat, but it feels like it's gone up again, doesn't it, since then, just because of the start to the season. So yeah, all good. It's been an enjoyable start to the season, and completely agree with you. Pointless second international break. Although I'm sure my missus wouldn't say so, to be fair. It's a Saturday off, isn't it? But it does feel like there's one too many in these early weeks.
Yes, well, we never get breaks on How We're the podcast, of course, do we, Gav? But anyway, I was going to ask, how's it going on We Are Sunderland? Because when I watch them, I can't help but notice your fancy backgrounds. It's almost like what players stand in front of when they do interviews in the tunnel after the game.
I wish I'd known you were going to say this, because me and Scott have literally recorded one this morning, and I had it up behind me.
Oh, no.
A peek behind the curtain. It isn't constantly up in my office. I do take it. Again, my missus would kill me if I just kept that up constantly. Just this acts as a bit of a kid's drop-off room as well. So so that's just been up. But yeah, all good. Well, and we are Sunderland, and they go Sunderland-wise. We've had plenty to go at, haven't we, with Sunderland? And our job, I know some wouldn't believe this, but our job is so much easier and so much more enjoyable when things are going well. And it's certainly been the case for Sunderland now, hasn't it, for a couple of years?
Yeah, well, we decided we've got faces for radio, didn't we, Gav? So we haven't bothered with a fancy wallpaper behind us or anything.
Nobody needs to see our ugly mugs, mate. That's all we need to say about that.
I absolutely know the feeling. It wouldn't be my choice. No, absolutely not.
Well, I said you cover the big three, and you did write specifically about Middlesbrough for the Gazette a few years ago. But just in terms of Sunderland getting promoted, how does that change the dynamic of how the three clubs gets coverage of the local press when Sunderland are being promoted? Now you've got two of them in the Premier League, and Middlesbrough are left behind in the Championship. How does that work?
I think it's important to the Northern Echo that really, regardless of how those three clubs are faring, relatively speaking, where we are kind of different as a Northeast regional paper, obviously various publications cover those three clubs specifically. Where we're different is we do our best to cover all three and cover all three fairly. So although Newcastle and Sunderland are in the Premier League, that doesn't necessarily mean we'll prioritise those over Middlesbrough, just like it didn't mean we prioritised Newcastle over Sunderland and Middlesbrough when they were both in the Championship. And when Sunderland were in League One, we gave Sunderland just as much coverage as we did Newcastle, who were in the Premier League at the time, or Borough, who were now and again doing okay at the top end of the Championship. So we always try and make it as balanced as we can in terms of how much we're covering the clubs. Where it changes when you get the Premier League is everything that surrounds the Premier League. And with respect to, I don't know, Preston away, Man United away, just everything that surrounds it. It's just a bigger game, isn't it? The excitement, the build-up, the everything that's been talked about by pundits or players, or again, with respect, what Ruben Amorim's saying about Sunderland is of more newsworthy interest perhaps than what the manager of, I don't know, Watford is saying about Sunderland. And I think from Sunderland's perspective, it feels fresh and new again, doesn't it? This is where Sunderland should be playing the football, but because of everything that's happened over the last few years, just that freshness and excitement. I wasn't at the West Ham game on the first weekend. Scott did it, but Scott said, just the buzz around the city and the stadium that day. You don't get that at the first day of a Championship season, do you? If you've been knocking around the Championship for a few years.
I just saw Gav's eyes go wide when you talked about the buzz and the excitement and all that sort of stuff. And it's amazing how many people are telling us, Gav, that they might not necessarily be, the season ticket holders or whatever, or the fans that we have and we've seen a lot. But it's just nice to hear people, that cover the games say exactly the same thing as we're feeling.
It's a totally different experience now at games, isn't it, Dom? I think things have totally changed. And I genuinely can't remember it ever being this way. Going to games now just feels... It feels like every game is a big occasion, and it feels like we're all bought into it. We're all in it together. It feels like the squad on the pitch and the fans in the stands are intertwined. And I genuinely can't remember that being like that. Not for a sustained period. Not in this way. I think we've had moments in the past where we felt connected. Like I remember under Allardyce when he kept us up. Towards the end of the season, there was a big connection between the squad and the fans, but then that quickly dissipated over that summer, and Moyes came in, and what happened after that point. Obviously, under Peter Reid, there were moments. Under Mick McCarthy, there were moments, but this just feels different because, as well as it all going right on the pitch, it feels like it's going right off it. And sat in on a talk last night with David Bruce and Florent Gassolfi, and they were talking about all these things, and they were trying to get the message across to the people in attendance that almost word for word, but David Bruce said this. He said, for too long, this football club has taken too long to do things. And he said that's not going to be the case anymore. We need to be fast. We need to be proactive. We need to be on the front foot like everybody else is. And when you turn up the games now, it's like that, isn't it, Dom? I mean, you'll have walked in the press room, for instance, the new press room. It's completely, you go in there now and you're like, it feels like a Premier League press room. It feels like a Premier League tunnel. It feels like a Premier League entrance. The area where Regis Labrise now takes his media conferences, that's all been done up. They've got big LED boards up behind them where they can, if they want to, they can change the backgrounds on it and things like that. And just little things like that. Again, last night, David Bruce was telling us that I think in November they're going to be getting new screens in. So we've got the 2 screens in the stadium now. You're also going to have screens which face the fans who are on that stand as well. So if you're stuck behind a tifo or a banner or something, you've still got a view of what's going on, or so all these little improvements, and they keep coming. There's more and more improvements coming. When I was there last night, they've got cleaning teams cleaning up the outside of the stadium. The painting, just doesn't it feel nice to turn up there now and watch games of football? It's like it's just all come to a head this sort of summer. Everything now we've got that Premier League money. It's given the club a new lease of life.
You said it there right at the very start. It's that occasion. It's that word occasion. Every game now feels like there's a sense of occasion there, doesn't it? But I think, as you say there, in the summer, we obviously talked again and again and again about the signings because signings were being made every other day, or that's how it felt, or new names were coming out every other day, exciting new names, exciting links. But I think what Sunderland have done off the pitch, not just this summer, but last summer, which I'll get to in a minute, but what Sunderland have done off the pitch has been equally as significant. And I think just hits home, really, this feeling and confidence that there's real clarity in where they want to go, where they want to be, and how they want to get there. It was only last week, wasn't it? They confirmed, and I should have written the names down. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but the behind the scenes arrivals who come in, like head of performance or whatever it was, a head of nutrition. Like, all these things are so important, aren't they? You need your players to be fit. You need your players to be operating like high performers day in, day out, and Sunderland are doing everything in their power to make sure that happens. But I go back, and I've said this a few times. I go back to last summer when the end of the previous campaign, the mood around the place then, there was apathy, wasn't there, at the end of that season when it ended in obviously such disappointment under Mike Dodds, who I don't think was to blame for any of that, or certainly not for the vast, clearly made mistakes in his time in charge, but he was put in a difficult situation, wasn't he? I felt Sunderland did a great job last summer of drawing a line under that completely. And in what started like a difficult summer, ended with a real feel of freshness, not just the appointment, but of Regis Labrise and some of the players assigned, but the club shop. Hummel did an amazing job, I thought, with the new kits, and it just felt, I thought, fresh. Now, had Sunderland started the season with 2 wins out of 10, I wouldn't be sat here saying what a job Sunderland did with their new club shop and Hummel. But I thought just everything came together, and I think Sunderland have done just as good a job off the pitch as they have on the pitch over the course of the last, 14, 15, 16 months.
Yeah, well, it's amazing, isn't it, Tom, when you go back to that summer, actually. And again, like I said, you covered Middlesbrough a lot, but if you actually compare the 2 clubs last summer, not the summer gone, summer before, as you were saying, Middlesbrough were the favourites to go up, and everyone was quite uncertain how it would pan out for Sunderland.
I mean, you only go back, and I don't expect you for 1 minute to buy yourself silly doing it, but if you go back and watch our pre-season videos, listen to pods, read the stuff, we had, myself and Scott, and I think various others, had Middlesbrough really, really fancied. I fancied Middlesbrough for a top 2. And Sunderland, I didn't know. I honestly didn't know, because Labrise was an unknown quantity, wasn't he? The way they'd finished the last season, I think it's so hard to get out of that slumps going over top, a slide, which it certainly was. And yet here we are now, 12 months down the line, and I've had various Middlesbrough-themed conversations in the early stages of the season where you're saying, look at Sunderland last season, they weren't fancied like Middlesbrough weren't this season, and yet they started the season in really well, and really that momentum fueled them throughout the season, which is what Middlesbrough are hoping will do to them this season. And we're seeing it again with Sunderland now, aren't we? I still think Sunderland built on the momentum of last season in the summer, and I think now they've built on the momentum of the summer with the way they've started the season.
Yeah. Gav, and you talked about that meeting with the likes of David Bruce, and you kind of went through other times when we've had connections, but you did them around characters. You were talking about, right, well, that connection was based on Peter Reid. That connection was based on Mick McCarthy. That connection was based on how Sam Allardyce, interacted with the crowd. This isn't around one character, what we're doing now. This is the club in everything, not just, as Dom just said, not just on the pitch, off the pitch, around the pitch, helping fans out. It all goes into the pot now where the club are building the foundations to kick on, regardless of what character is at the club.
I think as well what they're doing quite well now, and this was a point that was got over a little bit last night at that meeting, was that they're trying to make sure the players understand what the club is, what the identity and the culture is, as much as we possibly can. Things like, because it was mentioned about how, the players now, they throw their arms up when we get a throw in or a corner. And it was almost immediate, wasn't it? If you remember that West Ham game,
yeah.
There were players chucking their arms in the air to get the crowd going. I think it was a Dingra, if I remember rightly, originally. And little things like that, you just think, someone's obviously told them that you can elicit a response from the crowd if you just, you do something so simple. And I like it when I was talking to David Bruce, I was likening it to like a front man in a band, like playing to the choir kind of, why isn't that just something that happens anyways? You know what I mean? Maybe it's just a Sunderland thing where, we cheer tackles and winning set pieces as much as we do, getting a goal sometimes. I don't know. Maybe it is just a Sunderland thing. But, Florent Gassolfi was sitting in on this meeting and he told us, like, I'm trying to learn as much as I possibly can about you, as about people. I'm learning every day. Where I'm from, and I think he said he was from Corsica, said very similar. I used to work for Lens, and that's a mining city, a bit like Sunderland. So there's connection there. I've seen it, the value of hard work and things. But he said, like, he's living in the Hilton Hotel opposite the stadium, and every day he looks out of his window at the beacon of light. And he said, I didn't know what that was really. He said, nobody really tells us about these things. So I had to ask, like, what is it? Why? And then I learned about the foundation, and I learned what, how the foundation of light in the city, how much work they do for people. And there's people going in and out of building all day. And it's about more than football, isn't it? I think the more these people educate themselves and the more to be part of something, you've got to become part of it. You've got to live it the way we do as fans, I think. And it's very difficult to get highly paid professional footballers from all over the world who've been at all different kinds of clubs to fully buy in the way that a fan would. So it can take a lot of time. That, you look at Luke O'Nien, he's been here 8 years, and you would say Luke O'Nien is a Mackem, right? He embodies everything. He knows Sunderland inside out. A lot of these lads have just turned up. They're new to it. But what's really good is that it feels like they're being educated on what it means to us to do certain things. And I actually think the value of hard work is something that used to represent Sunderland. We used to always, like, I think back again, you're talking about the old days, Chris. There's a reason why Kevin Ball is loved. There's a reason why John Kay is still talked about. You know what I mean? There's a reason why, and it wasn't because they used to dance around people on the pitch and stick them in from 30 yards. It's because they could be horrible sometimes and they could get stuck in, And that's not all that defines us. But you just you watch this team now and you see elements of those things that we love in all of them. And the more time goes on, the more they learn about this football club. That's only going to get better, isn't it? And it's the same on and off the pitch, as I keep saying. The people who are working off the pitch, they've got to understand it as much as the players do, because when it comes to a Saturday, it means we're all bought in. We all understand what's expected of them. And as I keep talking about, it's all about getting 3 points, but it's getting 3 points in a way that we as Sunderland fans want to see them do it.
Yeah. But Dom, everything that Gav's talking about there, that's not a switch you can just flick And then suddenly because, all that playing to the crowd and stuff, if you get it wrong, it doesn't have an authentic feel about it and the fans don't buy into it. You've got to do it in such a way where it works and the fans buy into it. And, that the players then have that impact. But it's all about the characters we bring in. And clearly we've brought in the characters who are able to take that information and act on it.
That's the point I was going to make. I think it goes back to recruitment and not just maybe signing the right players, but signing the right characters. I was listening to a podcast this morning, just a general podcast. They were on about Rangers and who's going to go in and replace Russell Martin, and whoever it is has got to be able to deal with the might of Rangers and everything that surrounds it. I think you've got to be able to deal with being a Sunderland player. There's expectation that comes with Sunderland, with playing for Sunderland. This is a huge football club who have underachieved for a number of years now, and now finally seem to be back on I think for the last couple of years they've been on an upwards trend, haven't they? But now they're back where clearly they wanted to be, and they're not settling. They're not settling for what they've achieved over the last year or so. I think it's really important that you sign the right character as well as the right player, which is why we mentioned we were recorded our own pod this morning. We talked about the biggest hit of the season so far, for all the reasons I outlined there, which is why I think Granit Xhaka is the obvious, just because of the presence there, the aura there. And I think also, and Labrise was asked about this in his presser last week, it's a statement signing, isn't it? That Sunderland were able to sign Granit Xhaka in the summer, I think almost sends a message of like, right, we're back and we mean business. And Xhaka has shown in the first weeks of the season why not just Sunderland felt he was a really important signing as a player, but everything that surrounds it. He's a standards driver and a standard setter, isn't he? But then I think other players as well. You look at someone like Siddiqui and you're clearly attracted to his qualities as a player, but he needs to be able to handle the pressure of playing for Sunderland in the Premier League and playing in front of 40,000 fans where you're expected to perform, going to Old Trafford to perform and to win. And I think the signings have done that. I think that the recruitment team deserve immense credit. And Gav mentioned it, David Bruce, I think obviously he doesn't sign the players, but he has made the changes behind the scenes on a match day that I think has all helped everything come together and build really this this wall of expectation that come match day now, it feels like you're at an event again, doesn't it? It feels like you're at an occasion and you're going with real expectation.
Yeah. I mean, Gav, just on that, I mean, we'd mentioned earlier, and I think Don might have mentioned it, clubs looking at Sunderland as a way to move forward. But I actually think when you put everything into the pot and where we've come from and how we've had to build and how we've tried to get promoted, we didn't necessarily splash the cash. I think we're a really tough act to follow in terms of saying, right, we're going to copy that. I'm not sure it's as easy as that.
I don't think it is either, because if you remember when we were trying to find our identity in the lower leagues, we were probably sitting on these podcasts and writing things for the website saying, we've got to aspire to be like Brighton, like Brentford, like Bournemouth, these clubs who've made themselves sustainable in the top flight with a player ethos and a player trading model and, all these things. And it's fine to aspire to be those things, but we've not really copied them in any way, in my opinion. I actually think what we've done is we've created our own path using our own identity. And it's again, to go back to this chat with David Bruce, he was talking about how, when he got to Sunderland, he felt like it was just a case of the club had to try and embrace what it is. Like you would turn up at the stadium and you wouldn't know anything about what Sunderland was or meant or the history. You walk into the concourse, it could be any concourse in the country, and it's about like going, actually, what is Sunderland? What do we value as people? And then having that at the center of everything, right? So we've this year we've had to spend money to try and steal, for instance. we were always going to do that, whether, whatever your identity is, you've got to spend money to try and stay in the Premier League. But we've signed players who, I would say in every single case that I've seen so far, they all work hard. They all know the value of hard work. They're all malleable. How many times did we get linked, or we'd sign a player and then we talk about them and be like, he can play here, he can play a million positions. To me, if you're a player who through their career has played a multitude of positions, I think that says a lot about your character. It says that when all your managers, most importantly, think that you're useful in the sense that you can kind of go anywhere. You're a useful tool in their armory. So I think we went out and we signed the likes of Nordi Mukiele, who can play centre half, left back, right defender in a 3, in a 2. He can play right midfield. You look at Noah Siddiqui, who apparently has played games as a right back, can play hold midfield, can play further up in midfield. You go right through, right? Bertrand Traore plays centre forward for his country, but can play off either wing, can play in the 10 position. Shamsin Talbi, I didn't even know he could play wing back, but I've seen him play there, and he's very good there. So, we've gone out and we've signed people who we know, like, regardless of the baselines are covered, they're going to come in, they're going to work hard, they're going to be good professionals. And I think that's, on the back of losing on Saturday, we lost 2-0, right? And it wasn't great for the first half an hour. But after that point, I think we all sat back and went, the lads worked really hard, they reorganised themselves, they dug in, they didn't give up, we didn't capitulate. So even when we lost against Burnley, we kind of got caught on the hop trying to get back in the game with a second goal. So the 2 games we've lost this season, we were in the games, we weren't battered by anybody. And I think as fans, when you come away from the game and you go, well, for me, all I want is a team that tries. So if we win, we're not going to win every game. If we come away and we've lost a game, then at the very least, I want to see my team work hard for each other and graft and never give up. That's it. And if we get beat by the better team, as we did on Saturday, is what it is, isn't it? There can be no complaints. And that's why, when you're sitting and you're analysing the games, we're not laying into players for being lazy, which I've done in the past with other squads in previous years when that was genuinely a reason to pick at players, because we have had players here in the past who didn't want to be here, or, ultimately didn't respect the football club enough to put 110% in. And then I probably would have sat back and went, he was lazy today. I don't think I'm ever going to be in a position where I can say that about this lot. So that's comforting, isn't it? It's almost like it doesn't matter who we're going to play now. We know that the team, Regis Labrise has got a squad of 20 to pick from. They're all going to give their all. And I think that says a lot about what we've done over the summer.
Yeah, well, I think because Gav's taken us through the whole squad and turned the conversation to the pitch, I think that's a good chance for us to have a quick break. We'll be back after these few ads.
No one should have to choose between their own safety and their pets. But nearly half of domestic abuse survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Purina is helping to create more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters through the Purple Leash Project, so survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit Purina.com/purple to learn more.
Big news. Sephora is now on Uber Eats. So if you find yourself facing a beauty emergency, like needing a last-minute gift, or you're just out of your favorite mascara, again, don't panic. We got you. Order now and get $10 off on Sephora orders of $50 or more on the Uber Eats app. Order now. Offer ends October 30th. One order per customer. Additional terms apply. See app for availability. Delivery fees may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And welcome back to Howie the podcast. And we just want to turn the focus briefly to the manager, Dom. because I heard you and Scott Wilson on We Are Sunderland discussing the manager's press conferences. And when I was listening to you both, because we obviously see the camera side of it, but listening to you two, it does seem that the written press get a version of Regis Abruzza is a little bit more relaxed because he doesn't seem to give the cameras anything.
He's so understated, isn't he? I think that's the first thing. Just before I came on here, I was writing a piece about the questions about Granit Xhaka last week, and he was asked about his first conversation with Granit Xhaka on the phone, and he said it was fine, and you kind of expecting more, but you're not going to get it. But it never comes across as rude. I think it's just always incredibly understated, isn't it? Really, with everything. But the thing that strikes me with Labrisse's press conference is the honesty of it. So if you ask him a pretty direct question, he will give you a pretty direct answer. A couple of that spring to mind so far for me this season, I asked him about Anthony Patterson before the start of the season. When obviously Robin Roofs had come in and we didn't know how he was going to settle. He was a young goalkeeper coming in and playing Premier League football for the first time. It was a gamble. At that stage, it looked like a gamble, and we didn't know how good he was. And I asked then, is there a pecking order? Is there a goalkeeper pecking order? But clear as day, yeah, Robin's my number one. And it's kind of like Anthony will have to deal with that. Now, I think we've seen on numerous occasions over the time he's been in charge, there's a real ruthlessness there, isn't there? You only have to look at the team this season and the fact that Dan Neil is yet to really kick a ball. Anthony Patterson's obviously lost his place. There are other examples. Dennis Serkin's got a fight when he gets back. But there must also be a real strong element of man management in the background. There's got to be, because otherwise these players, this dressing room doesn't operate, does it? It isn't happy. I remember speaking to Dennis Serkin at the end of last season, and I asked, kind of similar to what you've asked there, like what's he like? What's he like behind the scenes? And I remember Serkin saying when he first came in, for a week or so, it was all kind of silent, really. He didn't say anything to anyone. He just watched. But he said it was only in the week or two that followed that I understood that he'd really watched. He had watched everything and he'd done his homework on everything. And then when it came to having to sit down with you, kind of knew everything about you, really. And he'd done his homework and learned what he felt he needed to learn. I think Labrisse has done a remarkable job at Sunderland, obviously last season, but this season as well, the start of this season. It's not easy, is it, to overhaul a successful squad, to completely revamp, really, a team that's just won promotion, and to continue to build momentum, to get them moulded together so quickly. But I think he's done that. I think he's a really good operator, top-end operator.
Yeah. Just quickly, Dom, how are the national press getting used to Regis Abruzza? I mean, have they realised yet that they're unlikely to get much out of?
Yeah, well, and that's why it's interesting, because did someone come up from Dominic King had come up from the Daily Mail last week, and I don't know whether you read it, but he did like a big hit on Sunderland in the Mail on Saturday. And I don't know whether he'd been up before and spoken to Labrisse before. I haven't seen him there before, but I'm not sure. I suspect he'll have realised that Regis Labrisse isn't going to talk like Tony Mowbray talked. He's not going to sit there for 75 minutes and give you 3 or 4 minute answers on every. You could just say to Mowbray, talk to me about Joe Bellingham. You wouldn't have to ask him a question, and he'd just fire away and give you your 750 words. Labrisse is obviously not like that. Some of his answers might be a sentence long, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. The Xhaka stuff last week was great. The Robin Roof stuff I thought was really good, where I don't know whether you'd seen or read it, but where he said he wasn't really aware of him until the recruitment team pointed him in his direction over the summer, was instantly blown away. I think he said he was the best, certainly the best he'd seen when they looked at numerous goalkeepers in the summer. So he might be a man of few words, but I think there's substance to what he says. Clearly, I think you have to get used to his quirks almost. And there are certain. If you set him up with a certain question, you will get an inevitable answer, won't you? What's Sunderland's aim this season? The aim is to win the next game. You know, you will get the inevitable answers. But if you ask him a pretty direct question about a player or a subject, there's no nonsense really. Clearly, he can't tell you everything that goes on. No managers ever can. But I think he answers as honestly as what he can in the circumstances, which I think's to be applauded.
Yeah, I mean, me and you, Gav, used to love watching Alex Neil press conferences, which were completely different. But I don't know about you, but I find it quite entertaining watching journalists try to get a headline out of Regis Labrousse.
He's a step ahead of everybody, isn't he? You know, even, last week it was all people trying to get sound bites out of him about Amarim's future at Man U, and he wasn't having any of it. He just couldn't give a shit, could he? You know, they're trying to. What do you think about how things are going at Man United? Amarim's future's in doubt, and he knew it was coming, and he just shut it down with a style he could only shut it down in. He's very respectful. He doesn't give much away, and the majority of the time, I think he understands, like, you know, particularly in the Premier League with a big spotlight on you, you get a couple of words wrong and they'll twist whatever it is you've said, and it can be made into more than it is. And you know, he's I don't think he's prepared to get dragged into that. So he kind of just, I think Dom's right. You know, he just, so if he doesn't want to talk about something, he's very good at kind of, you know, like a politician would, but he does it in a way where it feels very authentic, doesn't he? Because he is quite an authentic person. So not like a politician, where a politician you can tell when they're trying to spin something. But no, I think he's got a very unique way, and I agree with Dom as well. When it comes to, again, people trying to, I think sometimes it is just trying to get a soundbite out of him or whatever. Rather than it be twisted, he will just be honest as well. And you know, you mentioned the great. It was a great example actually, because it would have been the one that I thought of. The one with Anthony Patterson, where he just, I just wasn't expecting it. You know, when he was asked about who is your number one, and he just said, you know, Robin Roofs is my number one, and it was that directness, and there was no bouncing around, and he didn't ramble on for 2 or 3 minutes to give an answer. He just said it as it was, you know, and that says more than you probably realize, right? Because that tells me the players are very clear on what's going on as well. So, you know, I think it's very interesting that despite a lot of last season's team effectively being not frozen out, but they've been replaced, there hasn't been murmurings of discontent and anger. And yes, I know there was the Alan Brown thing when he went to Middlesbrough, but even then it was pretty tame, and you know, it wasn't like a big scandal, like, you know, all these players have been dumped and they've been made to train with the kids. And on that, by the way, you know, there's Abdullah Bar, Timothy Pembele, Jay Matete, Joe Anderson, all these players who didn't get moves in the summer. Again, you're not hearing any discontent in the press or from their agents or anything. And I think that says an awful lot about how well communicated the state of players to these people and to the players. Dan Neil and Pato and all the rest of them. I don't know if you've seen, but like Anthony Patterson's dad's on Twitter, and he's been resharing posts about Robin Roofs, really praising him and things. And, you know, it would be easy to be bitter, wouldn't it? But if the club have been really fair with these players, what else can you do, really? And I think that's his way. Regis Labrousse is very direct.
If you ask any player what they want from a manager, the first thing they'll say is honesty. They want to know. Yeah. It's like all of us, isn't it? You want to know where you stand. If you want to know where you stand with your manager in work, and that's the same for them. And I think Labrousse has clearly done that well, because if he's as honest as he is with us with questions like that, then he's not going to bullshit him behind the scenes, is he? He's not going to tiptoe around the subject. But I think you mentioned right at the start there about like maybe he relaxes a bit in the written section of the press conferences. I think managers just naturally probably do, because as soon as they hear, you know, cameras off now. You know, like you said there, Gav, but as a Premier League manager, I think even a manager in any of the 4 leagues now, even in the EFL, if you say something and get tripped up, even if it's inadvertent, it does the rounds and gets shared immediately, doesn't it? I always remember, you mentioned Middlesbrough a few years ago when Jonathan Woodgate was in charge, who really, really good guy, really personable, would do anything for you, like understood the club as well, obviously. When he did his press conferences, obviously broadcast and then written, when the cameras stopped, that you just saw such a difference because he relaxed, and I think he could just be himself then. Because really, if you're in a written, especially when it's the same guys, you know, this isn't like you Man United where there's maybe 3 or 4 nationals or 2 or 3 from every national every week. It's the same guys and the same faces. If you're in the written press conference and you say something that immediately you think, I shouldn't have said that, you could just say, oh, look, like, you know, I shouldn't have said that. Do us a favour, off the record, or give you a bit of guidance off the record. If you're asking about a player all the time, actually, guys, look, off the record, don't report this, but there's an injury there or there's a personal issue there that we don't want to get out. You can do that in the written side of things when the cameras are off, can't you? You can't do that when the cameras are rolling. So I think it's only natural that there's maybe a bit more of a guard up when you know you're going out live to however many thousand and then you're going to be on Sky Sport and the BBC and wherever else that night.
We'll get into the United game in a minute, Dom, but just purely looking at the 6 games that came before, we'd only lost at Burnley away, but where did you stand on the whole points versus the opposition debate? Because everyone seemingly outside of Sunderland had the reaction, well, yeah, look who you've played.
Well, I think Aston Villa are a prime example. Where were Aston Villa when Sunderland played them? Second bottom, hadn't won a game, hadn't scored a goal, and you're looking at that and thinking, what an opportunity this is. You wouldn't fancy playing them now, 2 weeks down the line. It can change so quickly, can't it? And yes, Sunderland have had maybe favourable games. They've played West Ham at home on the first day of the season, which I think is probably the nicest game you could have asked for. But they've also been away at Crystal Palace, who are the form team in Europe. Brentford are no mugs, are they? They were expected by a few after obviously Frank and everything that happened in the summer to be down there, and they're not. You've without going all manager speak, you've got to win the games that are in front of you, aren't you? And we're looking at December now. We were only talking about this morning. We're looking at that spell in December and January and thinking, God, that looks brutal. You know, how where are you finding points there? But you don't know, do you? Like what injuries are going to come up for players, what form's going to happen for players, what the stories, how quickly it can turn. And I think Villa are the example because in a fortnight they've gone from being treading towards a crisis, really, to actually everything's fine. They've won 3 games in a row. They're climbing the table. It's the Aston Villa we've got used to watching over the course of the last couple of seasons. I also think it was important, though, that for all we've said there, Sunderland's start was presentable, wasn't it? There's no getting away from that. And I think it was hugely important that they did manage to get points from that, because had you flipped that, had you had this start and been winless and in the bottom 3 like Wolves now, you look at that thinking, well, where on earth are the points going to come from this season? I actually think, like last season, the momentum and the belief that comes from the positive and strong early start of the season can fuel Sunderland now in the weeks and months ahead.
Yeah. I mean, Gav, on those 6 games, do you think we got the credit that we deserved in terms of the points we picked up from maybe the national press, I suppose?
Yeah, I think in the press we did. I think from sensible people we got plenty of credit. Lots of people have been singing Sunderland's praises, so I can't really fault that. I think what's probably been the tone has been Sunderland have surprised people rather than, you know, you've played crap teams or teams in crap form. That hasn't been the case, I don't think. A lot of the derision has came from fans of other clubs who maybe look at it and look down their nose a bit at it. But actually, I think in the media they've been pretty fair with Sunderland, and we've got plenty of praise. I think the one we didn't get enough praise for, probably not even from ourselves, was the Palace draw. because Crystal Palace, they only just lost their first game in 20, I think, against Everton at the weekend, and it was a last-minute winner, wasn't it, from Jack Grealish? Kind of just felt them at the right time and hit them and went in, but regardless, scored. They lose the game. We went to Selhurst Park and were up against it for large periods of that game and came away with a clean sheet. And I just think that tells you more about this Sunderland team than probably beating West Ham did, because or even the Villa game where we went down to 10 men and had to play 66 minutes with 10 men, and still you could probably say deserved something out of the game. And we didn't win the game, but we probably could have. And we were getting, people are looking at and going, what's going on at Villa? Unai Emery's not getting the results and the fans are turning on him a little bit and all this, that and the other. Those conversations are always going to go on. Like if we beat Man United, it wouldn't have been about how good Sunderland are. It would have been about how bad Man United are. And I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. I don't think Sunderland are in this to get shitloads of praise from people. We're in this just to get through do it our way and get there however we get there. And I don't think we were talking about this last week, Chris, right? With the Manager of the Month nomination that Reggie Slabrisky. I don't think he cares about admiration and national attention. It's just not something that particularly bothers him. And I think as fans we're probably the same, right? We just want to get through each game, pick up points, and if we get to the end of the season and people are talking about us, great. What I don't want is people to overlook how good we actually are. And I think that did go on for about a month or so until people were like, actually, hang on, no, these are decent. Because you had the likes of Carragher, didn't you, writing us off, and Chris Sutton doing his predictions on the BBC website every week saying Sunderland were going to get beat. First time he predicts a win, we get beat, by the way. But like, I think there was probably a little bit of ignorance there, wasn't there, with how we started the season. But I think that's kind of changed a little bit. Even in the wake of the Man United game, I think the fact we went into that and people were tipping us to beat them at Old Trafford says actually the conversation's changed a little bit.
Yeah, well,
I think you nailed it there, Gav. Sorry, just that quickly. What you were saying about in the Premier League, there's always a story, isn't there? So Sunderland beating West Ham, obviously, like great start for Sunderland, first on Match of the Day. But the West Ham shambles. The draw with Villa are still winless. The win at Forest, well, Postecoglou hasn't won at Forest yet. The narrative so often in the Premier League is with the crisis clubs, isn't it? So I think that's why maybe Sunderland haven't got the credit they deserve in some quarters. But I did feel it change a bit after that Forest win. I wonder whether it's because it was live on Sky and it wasn't just one win, but was it 4 unbeaten then at that point? It felt like in the aftermath of that, it changed. And I was convinced Sunderland were going to win at Man U on Saturday. Convinced. I could not believe the odds. I mean, which is why the bookmakers are sat in the houses they're sat in, and I'm sat in the house I'm sat in. But I couldn't believe at the start of the week that I'd seen Sunderland was 6-1 at the start of the week. Clearly the odds were right, but I really fancied Sunderland to win there. It felt to me like a lot of the predictions and the punditry at the start of the year was lazy, didn't it? From the national pundits, the names we see again and again, it did feel like a lot of that was lazy. If you now go around those same pundits and ask them who'll go down, I'd be amazed if any of them had Sunderland.
Yeah. Well, that's a good place just before we get into the Man United game to have another quick break. So we'll be back after these few ads.
Experience a membership that backs your business journey with American Express Business Platinum. When you pay with membership rewards points for all or part of an eligible flight booked with a qualifying airline through Amex Travel, you can get 35% of those points back, up to 1 million points back per calendar year. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
Walmart Business is in the business of saving you time, money, and hassle. Whether your business started in a garage or is a garage, Walmart Business has the tools to help you get where you're going. Tools like free shipping, multi-user accounts, and just about any item your company needs.
Even a double filtration cyclone dust collector.
Yep, even that.
Sweet.
Walmart Business. It's the Walmart you love. Now for your business. Learn more at business.walmart.com. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Nature's Bounty. Nature's Bounty believes your body is brilliant, naturally designed to thrive, inside and out. For those always looking for new ways to support your health from head to heels, Nature's Bounty has a range of over 400 vitamins and supplements born from 50 years of trust and care. Nature's Bounty. It's in your nature. Visit naturesbounty.com to learn more.
And welcome back to Howie the podcast. And we're just about to get into the Manchester United game. And Dom just mentioned it just before we had the break that I had a bone to pick with him, that I listened to him and Scott predict that we'd beat Manchester United, which added to my so thank you very much for that, Dom. But just before kickoff, and it's funny listening to his press conferences, listening to you and Scott as well in that build-up. The fact that he talked about consistency and he talked about how good the foundations were in terms of our defensive structure. And then out of almost nowhere, he makes a couple of changes, which looks on paper to have tried to have improved us in the final third when we had that almost perfect structure to contain sides set up for that Forest game. And was it as big a shock for you when the team sheet came out?
Yeah, I think it was, just because I thought the Forest win was such a professional win, really, in the manner of it. And Old Trafford, for example, Masuaku had a torrid time in that first half, didn't he? But he wasn't helped by what was in front. And had he maybe had that bit more protection of Lafay on the left, then things might have been different. I don't think Talby has been quite as impressive as some of the other signings, but he's getting better with every game, isn't he? And Labrise has clearly seen a lot that he likes because he's been a regular in the team. So I thought that was surprising as well. And we had the conversation immediately after the game, and I had a conversation with a few saying maybe a bit of a reality check for Sunderland, but I don't think it was. In actual fact, I'm coming away from that thinking Sunderland have missed a big opportunity there. If national reports on Friday were to be believed, Amorim was fighting for his job and could have gone if they'd have lost. Mentioned the goalkeeper in for his first game, home debut. We all know the story around Man United goalkeepers in the last couple of years and the shambles that has been. Put him under pressure because he will no doubt have been feeling the nerves. I just came away. United were good for half an hour, taking nothing away from them. But I thought Sunderland let him off the hook a bit. Labrise's selection backfired. The performance, probably, I don't think it's overly critical to say it's the worst 45 of the season so far, even taking into account that United were good. And for all the second half was even, and the substitution and tactical change changed the game. Yeah, I came away thinking that's an opportunity missed.
Yeah. Gav, we talked a lot about the starting lineup on the pods after the game. But I was reading one of Dom's articles on his comments, on the manager's comments to explain it. And he said, in our squad, we have different options and our philosophy is to give opportunities to everyone. And that was kind of him explaining his decisions. But, what do you make of those comments in terms of his team selection and just giving players opportunities? Because the theory is, once you have such a good performance like Forest and the players know what they're doing, the natural instinct is to keep it the same.
Maybe for us, yeah. Maybe not for him. I think he's, a very skilled coach and kind of understands that to keep all of these players on board, ultimately, with what we're trying to do this season, that he is going to have to freshen things up occasionally, bring in different players for certain situations. I think we talked about it after the game, Adingra and Traore starting was a shock, but I could see exactly what he was trying to do, because we thought, actually, Man U are so flat that if we can get at them early in the game and get an early goal, then those tactical tweaks he likes to make, you then go that more defensive and you maybe bring those players off. And you could see what the plan was. We just got outdone by a bit of quality, and when we switched off a little bit for that first goal, and it was so early in the game that your plan goes out the window. It's a bit like getting someone sent off early in the game, isn't it? It scuppers everything when you concede that early on. But more generally is like talking about rotation and keeping players happy and bringing people in and out. We talked about this on the Q&A pod that we did this week. when it comes round to the AFCON and us losing players, we can't just throw in players cold. They're going to have to have played. They're going to have to have been around these other players on the pitch and contributing, because it would be a disaster, if I'm honest, if we just chuck in 4 or 5 bodies who've not been playing. They've got to have minutes in their legs. They've got to have been starting games. So, and that's not far away. We're into October now. We're talking just under 2 months. We're going to be looking ahead to the African Cup of Nations, and we're going to be losing some important players. So I think he's just got to try and strike the right balance. And again, we said this after the weekend, Chris, had we not conceded so early on in the game, and it's all coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I actually think if we get past that sort of 20, 30-minute mark at 0-0, I think we win that game. I do. Because I think Man United's plan was to really get at us early, yes, and overload that left-hand side of the pitch. But if we could have rode through that, I think the more the game went on, we actually were the better team, even at 2-0 down. And I think that would have been the case at 0-0. So, you know, it's all coulda, woulda, shoulda. Yeah, it didn't work at the weekend. But if it had worked, we'd have been sat there going, what a stroke of genius. So you can, yeah, it's one of them.
Yeah, well, Traore scores in the first half, and I know the flag went up, but it was close.
Yeah.
There'd have been a check, wouldn't there? Then,
yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to do more coulda, woulda, shoulda, because first goal, Dom. We had a bit of a debate after the game whether it was fantastic play from Manchester United or it was more Sunderland switched off for it. But there was that, and then the period after that, as you said, Ahmad and Mbeumo were fantastic down their right hand side, but. Do you think an element after that goal was, do you think the manager in hindsight will be looking at it and think, actually, I maybe waited too long to make some changes?
Yeah, and you do wonder, and I suspect Labrisa's response to this would be a firm no for all that I've said there about his ruthlessness. you do wonder whether even in Labrisa's mind there's an element of can I hook a player after 15 minutes? And I think you had to make the personnel change. I don't think you could have moved to a back three with the players you had on there because you couldn't have put a Dingra as a left wing back, for example, could you at that point? I think you would have had to call on Ballard. I thought he was going to come on early because I don't know. You see, McWhaley did his hammy, didn't he? After a minute,
yeah, he was holding it. I thought. Yeah, it was only for about 30 seconds, and I thought, no, he's coming straight off. Yeah,
but they sent Ballard out to warm up straight away, and we're sat just not far behind the dugout, and Ballard had come back, wolfed the banana down, had 2 swigs of Red Bull. So this must be his he was getting ready to come on, and obviously McWhaley was fine, and I thought McWhaley did well actually after that. Once things settled down, he did well. But yeah, the change completely changed the game. But then also, I do think you have to bear in mind at that point, United have a 2-goal lead then, and they maybe don't need to go for the jugular like they were at 1-0. In the second half, they settled for it, I think. Sunderland were better, weren't they, in the second half? But United also, I think, settled for what they had. I think the other regret in the second half, I wrote this at half-time, if Sunderland get the first goal here, if Sunderland could score before 70 minutes, the atmosphere was dead. I couldn't believe how flat the atmosphere was there. And I think it had so quickly turned and got nervy. And the players undoubtedly would have done, just because of everything that's gone on at Man United. So the regret, I think, has to be that Sunderland didn't make life a bit more difficult for United. Do you think, what did you make of the Traore? Sorry if you've gone over this already, but the Traore, did you think it was a foul?
I was just about to bring you on to that, because my view was that it was a free kick and it was a yellow card to Fernandes. That would have been my conclusion.
Well, yeah, if there was any contact, it was definitely Fernandes, wasn't it? Rather than the goalkeeper.
Yeah, Gav will have you in a minute, mind. Go on, Gav.
Go on.
Well, yeah, I think they both make contact, but I guess, what the issue I had with that, Dom, was that, and I know there's nothing we can do about this, but for me, isn't that why you've got VAR to clear things up? Let's say Traore gets a second yellow and gets sent off. That's unfair. He shouldn't have been booked. But obviously, in them situations, they don't go to VAR. They don't overrule. It was definitely a foul. He doesn't dive. But both players make contact. I was really wound up about it at the time because I felt properly wronged by it. But at the same time, these things happen, don't they? It is what it is.
Well, let's just put it to you, Dom. Put this question to you: if that was Manchester United, and there was a high foot in the box, and their winger and Buemo went through two players and got brought down like that, do you think those decisions go the other way?
So 5 years ago, you'd have undoubtedly said that United would have got that penalty. I think the first one was, I don't think that was a penalty. I think that was the right call. And I think that'd have been chalked off by VAR regardless. So I've got to be honest. My initial instinct on the Traore one, just on the replay that I'd seen in front of me, and I only saw it once at the time, was that it wasn't a foul. But then after the game, we were having the conversation with as you do in the press room, and everyone else was saying it's a foul. There's impact. There's contact there. It's a foul. From Fernandes more so. It's a foul. And in that case, then you would think, you would certainly think there's more chance Man United get it.
Yeah,
it's a game-changing incident as well, and or you would think it would have been.
Yeah, well, it's these things that Lebris always talks about, these incidents in games, these moments, and he says games hang on these scenarios and it changes the course of the game. But in terms of his changes, Dom, we had a big debate on it, and I'll bring Gav in a second. We had a big debate on the Q&A because a lot of questions came in saying, looking at the Villa game, which was a very specific scenario, and then maybe the Manchester United was a very specific scenario as well. We moved to 3 or 5 at the back or whatever you want to call it. And people are now asking the question, is that now the way forward for Sunderland? But do you think that's a massive call considering he's put so much stock in the system he's played for over a year?
Yeah, I do. I think he has the players to really make a success of that. And I think the other thing is, it gives him a way to get Dan Ballard in the team, because that how do you put Ballard in because Mukwele and Alderete have been so good? But how do you leave Ballard out? Because he was so good before he got the injury. And I thought he was excellent when he came on Saturday as well. But like, for what you said there, really, we know now from 14, 15 months of watching Lebris's sides that he is not afraid to go away from the way he maybe wants his side to look. He went to 4-4-2 randomly on a number of occasions last season, didn't he? But he never went to wing, or very, very rarely. And it was only ever in game, wasn't it, that he moved to a back 3 and wing backs. So I do see, I think it'd work. I'd be surprised if he did it. I'd be amazed if at home to Wolves a week on Saturday when it all starts again, if it was a back 3, and wing backs. Yeah. Then again, like, he sat in his press conference last week and unprompted talked about Gertrude being able to play as a centre half in a 3. It's clearly something that's crossed his mind, but might be wrong on this. I think it's more likely to be used as an in-game option rather than a drastic change at this point.
Yeah, you're nodding, Gav, and it was me, Andrew, and Johnny giving the answers the other day, and you asking the questions. So we haven't had your thoughts on the 3 or 5 at the back yet.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Dom, but I'm undergoing the same sort of quandaries about Ballard. I wish he was in the team, because he is so different to all the other players on the pitch. It's that sort of like he would rather die than let a ball go past him. You know what I mean? He'll throw himself at the ball to block it and head it, and when we get a set piece, he's the biggest threat on the pitch, I think, every time he's on the pitch. And when you consider how central to our attacking game plan set pieces are, they're going to be having the same conversations. Like, bloody hell, how do we just get him on the pitch, you know? And the one I chucked out there on the Q&A pod was because we were having a conversation about Trey Hume and whether he maybe could be brought out of the team for a little bit, that they would shuffle Mukiele over to there where he played the second half and bring Ballard. And I can see that happening eventually. And it was certainly no slight on Trey Hume. I actually listened back to the show earlier, Chris, and like, yous were all trying your best to get across, like, look, we love Trey Hume. We do not have anything bad to say about Trey Hume here. But, it may be the case that he moves things around a little bit. And as well, to be honest, it could be the case. And I made this suggestion when we did the match day pod before who did we beat?
After
Forest
Villa.
game?
Forest.
No, it was Forest. It was before we played Forest, where I said, actually, you could see a situation where Hume maybe goes left back.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And I quite like Trey Hume at left back. Yeah, he doesn't give you width, but I think he deals with Ahmad a lot better than Masuaku did at the weekend if you play him there. Because all Ahmad does is cuts inside, which would be onto his favoured foot. You never see Ahmad go down the outside and cross the ball, and he always comes inside.
That's what Mbeumo did for the first goal as well.
Yeah. And you just can't help but wonder, had you had Trey Hume there, would that have happened? Look, we can't do anything about that now, but it's important to say that, going forward, that is an option. He plays there for his country and he's away with his country, so there's an opportunity for us to take a closer look at it, because he's going to have probably 2 games either playing on either left wing back or left of a 3 or right of a 3. He doesn't play right back for Northern Ireland because of Conor Bradley, so he's going to get plenty of time to practice. And I don't know, I would be very, very tempted for that Wolves game, not only because I think I don't want to do Masuaku down, but he hasn't been great in the 2 games there. If you get Hume over there, it gets Ballard into the team. It keeps Mukiele on the pitch, who I think has got more pace and power down the right-hand side. And this is a point I made on the last pod, their 2 centre-forwards are big, and Ballard will help deal with that threat. So I would not be shocked if that's what happens going into Wolves. And it would only be for one more game, and then you've got Ronaldo back, and then it's a different conversation again.
Yeah,
I'd do that for Wolves.
Yeah, well, we're looking ahead to Wolves as we are after the international break. I mean, Dom, do you think this provides a different test in terms of mentality? Because I'd argue it's probably the first time where the players take to the pitch with a massive expectation around them, potentially from the stands more than anywhere. But there's a big expectation, actually, looking at Wolves and where we are and what we've done, that we go out and get 3 points. Do you think that that's something that the manager's going to be trying to work on in the build-up to the game?
I think it's a really important game because after the defeat, I know there's a break, so it kind of feels like the fresh. But like you say, this probably for the first time this season, maybe with Brentford, but it was so early in the season at that point. I don't think that was the case, and it certainly wasn't with Villa. I know Villa hadn't scored at that point, I don't think, but you still go into that game thinking this Villa team has to click at some point, aren't you? Like, Villa have been quality for the last 2 or 3 years, whereas this is a Wolves team yet to win, conceded another late goal at the weekend. The squad probably looks as weak as it has done maybe since the won promotion. I think that's fair. And for the first time, I mentioned odds there. I haven't seen the odds yet. I think Sunderland probably for the first time this season will be odds-on favourites to win at home. There might have been for the Brentford game, but I think, and that does bring a different sort of expectation, doesn't it? You're expected to take the game to Wolves. You're expected to win the game, but I think it feels important, because if you win that game, then that Man United defeat is forgotten about, and again, you're looking forward, you're looking up. Tough game at Chelsea that follows, but you go there suddenly thinking, well, I know Chelsea have beaten Liverpool, but they've had an indifferent start. Again, Stamford Bridge feels like the type of place where get on the players' backs if you have a good start. If you don't beat Wolves at home, then suddenly that feel-good factor from Forest and everything before obviously hasn't disappeared, anything but it's been chipped away at. There's no doubt about it. And again, you're looking at it as a missed opportunity. So I think someone will beat Wolves, but I think it's probably the most important game of the season so far.
Wow. I mean, Gav, how do you think, the fact that we're maybe expected to win this game, how do you think that maybe changes the dynamic of how we approach it tactically and mentally?
I think the lads will be really up for it, which is one of the most important things. We'll be. I can't imagine that we'll be still thinking of that defeat at Man United. I think the international break will do us a favour. it'll refocus everybody. And as we've already talked about earlier in the pod, these home games have all felt like big occasions, and this one will as well. And that makes the Stadium of Light a very, very difficult place for teams to come to, especially teams who are struggling. I can't imagine Wolves are particularly looking forward to it. But at the same time, we'll still be looking at this and going, this is a chance for us to get points and to try and climb away from the bottom of the table. So for Sunderland, though, I just think you've got to look at how we cope with the other home games we've played. We've been absolutely outstanding every one of them. And a big part of that has been that connection between the fans and the players and the atmosphere. We've got to make sure we all do our part on the day. But I genuinely think that we won't be sitting going, God, we've got to win today. God, we've got to win. There won't be nerves. It'll be more, oh, well then, bring it on. I genuinely think that's the attitude at the minute. We're still in sort of honeymoon period in terms of the promotion, and that's going to carry into this game, I think. So, no, I can't imagine that anybody will be worrying too much and thinking like, oh God, we've got to win today. That's not the way that that's just not the attitude at the minute, is it?
Yeah, you calling honeymoon, and you were just about to get married. Bit of a Freudian slip there, mate. But last point for you, Dom, because we talked about everything ramping up, and we've got that run in December, which we mentioned. Do you think that we're not really going to know where our place is in the Premier League until we get beyond that and into the new year and past that run of games?
Tony Mowbray always used to say 10 games, didn't he? I pay no attention to the table until 10 games in. I think clearly come December, when you've lost players to AFCON, although I don't think that's as calamitous as what maybe some would have had you believed in the summer. We did this summer. If you go through the team, it's not hard to still name a very, very strong Sunderland side. You lose a layer of quality on the bench, don't you? That's probably an issue, and then you may be one or two injuries away from being in trouble in certain areas. But I don't think that is going to be quite the issue that it was maybe made out by some. I think even at this stage now, what we've seen is that Sunderland have nothing to fear in the Premier League, and I think the other significant thing is, when Sunderland had won the playoff final, me and Scott came away and we were driving home and we talked about how Sunderland were going to do in the Premier League. And the problem we had was, at that stage, you're saying, well, if they're going to finish 17th, who's going to finish below them? The two promoted teams. But who else? Right. Because for all you could name teams and say, oh, well, what if this happens there or what if that happens there? The bottom three were so far cut adrift last season. And the next team up were Tottenham. Who were never going to be as bad this year as they were last year. So my fear at that stage was, who are Sunderland going to finish above? Now, I think it's not West Ham, Wolves, Brentford, the two promoted teams. Just straight there off the top of your head, you've got 4 or 5 teams who Sunderland are going to finish above. So is 17th still a successful season for Sunderland? Yes, I think it probably is, just because of the foundations it gives you for what is then to come. But I also think you'd be looking at 17th and God, let's hope that things don't go drastically wrong and this is held up as a clip that painfully backfired. But I actually think, as things stand now, you'd be looking at 17th as probably a bit of an underachievement. Not a bit, an underachievement. As things stand now, I think Sunderland could very, very I'd be confident saying Sunderland are very capable of finishing 13th or 14th in the Premier League. I think that's the evidence that we've seen in the early weeks of the season.
Right.
That's the word, by the way, capable. I think it's because we've watched the team the way we started the season. You're looking at the quality of the players and the way they've gelled so quickly together. And you're right, though, Dom. It's like, well, they are capable of more than just being a relegation battling team. So if we did just stay up, I would imagine after the start we've had, people would be a little disappointed. But I mean, I still sat here right now, I'd absolutely break your arm off.
100%. Yeah.
But I totally get what you're saying, like, because, I can't remember who it was on the pod the other day. It might have been James Hunter was saying about how, when you look at the clubs we've signed these players from, they've all came from teams either challenging for major honours or playing in Europe. So the capability of the squad is that they've proven elsewhere that they've won trophies, they've challenged for trophies, they've captained their countries. You know, so yeah, you know, you look at that bottom three and you're going, well, the evidence is that these are players who typically operate at top clubs. You know, so yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to end this podcast before you get really carried away. But a quick one, Dom. I assume, are you covering the game against Wolves?
Scott's there for the Wolves game. Yeah, I've done the last two. Scott's there for the Wolves game, okay. Which is a shame because I think, like Gav said there, I think like class atmosphere, good occasion. I think it'll feel big again. But yeah, Scott's there, and he was there for West Ham and Brentford, to be fair. So he hasn't been a bad omen for the home games. So
nice one. Keep them coming. If we'll beat Wolves, make sure it's always Scott, right?
He'll do home, I'll do away.
Brilliant. Well, it just leaves us to say thank you very much, Dom. Really appreciate your time as always, mate.
No, thanks for having me. No, I always enjoy it. So thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Good stuff. And thank you very much, Gav, because we've got loads coming up, haven't we, on How We're the Podcast all through the international break.
We have indeed, mate. Yeah. Jam-packed schedule. We've tried to keep ourselves busy, haven't we? Because when there's no games to talk about, we have to find other things to talk about. So get great guests on, just like Dom, but we've also got a couple in the pipeline, haven't we? So yeah, lots going on, including your colleague over there, Scott Wilson. He's going to be joining us for our match day preview ahead of the Wolves game. So plenty in the schedule, Chris.
Yeah, trying to keep busy. I'm bloody chasing my tail every bloody day, mate. Don't worry about that. But thanks again, everyone, for listening. We really do appreciate it. Keep a look out on the Roker Report website. We'll have loads of coverage during the international break. Or, of course, our daily releases on How We're the Podcast, as Gav says. But from us, it's bye for now.
Podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Find the biggest voices in sports on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like the Fantasy Football Scout podcast. If you want to win at FPL and dominate your mini-leagues this season, then make sure you subscribe to the Fantasy Football Scout podcast. You'll get all the tips, stats, picks, and elite transfer knowledge from some of the very best in the game. Just search Fantasy Football Scout wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.